Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Deep Roots with What We Plant Matters, which I'm so happy for you all to join us today. We have a great show for you on Front Yard Foraging with Ginger Miller, Missouri Department of Conservation. But before we begin, I just have a few announcements to make. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Missouri Department of Conservation, for protecting fish, forest, and wildlife resources and connecting our community to nature. I'd also like to thank donors like you for making programs like this possible. If you enjoyed today's episode of Deep Roots, join us each first and third Thursday for a new live episode where we look into small and large landscapes and discuss ways that we can support nature at home and beyond. We have so many in-person programs for you all this month. And happy May, by the way. May 1st is today. First on our list is the Native Landscape Chat that I host every first Friday at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center. This is a fun way to see what all's blooming in our landscape and bring your gardening questions for some one-on-one consultation with our garden experts. So join me tomorrow at 1 p.m. at the Discovery Center. I hope to see you there. We also have our Habitat Garden Tours coming up on Saturday, May 10th from 9 to 2 p.m. This is a great way to see different native gardens here in the Kansas City area and get inspiration for your own homes. You'll also get to talk to our garden hosts about their different processes. And we have some really cool gardens featured in this month's event. We'll be visiting the Troostwood area as well as Blue Hills, which is just by the Discovery Center and coincides with our Deep Roots plant sale. So hurry and set your pre-orders now with City Roots Nursery, So Wild Natives, and Missouri Wildflower Nursery. My recommended line of events for that day would be go to the garden tour first. It starts at 9 a.m. Get your inspiration and then come pick up your pre-orders and buy some extra plants from our plant sale. The plant sale does start at 10 a.m., so it gives you the perfect opportunity to visit the garden tours ahead of time. I hope to see you at these events. Later this month, I'm also hosting a guided naturalist walk at Big Bull Creek Park with Johnson County Park and Recreation. Y'all, let's spend half the day together and wander through the woods. There's so many cool things to see blooming, and you can get a sneak peek of what you can expect in our next webinar on Thursday, May 15th. So be sure to tune in and then join me in person for a day of fun out in Edgerton, Kansas with Johnson County Park and Recreation District. As always, today's show will be recorded and all the resources will be available online. Don't forget, put your comments in the chat. I love to hear where you're all tuning in from. And if you have questions for Ginger for the live Q&A at the end, please put those in the Q&A. And while you're at it, after today's show, I hope you'll visit us online at deeproots.org to find information about our upcoming events, our nature show, native gardening resources, and how you can get involved. While you're there, consider making a donation. I'd like to go ahead and welcome Ginger Miller to the virtual stage. Ginger Miller grew up in rural Missouri outside of Windsor on a family farm. She got her PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology from the University of Kansas, studying insect communication, which, Ginger, we're going to have to talk about that more in depth because I want to know everything about that. That's so cool. Ginger came to the department in 2016 after teaching a variety of college biology courses. She enjoys fishing, gardening, food fermentation, and spending time with her rescue Pekingese pack. She loves the challenge of identifying insects and spiders from blurry photos and helps folks overcome their fear of nature. Ginger has a passion for outdoor cooking and preparing gourmet wild edibles and wild game. Ginger's role with Missouri Department of Conservation is to serve as the conservation educator for Cass, Bates, Henry, and Vernon counties. She trains teachers to implement our Discover Nature Schools program, which is pre-K through 12th grade, hands-on, inquiry-based, and meets their science standards through conservation education. She also trains teachers to implement our hunter education program, Discover Nature Fishing program, and the National Archery in Schools program through Missouri Department of Conservation. Additionally, she helps write and revise curriculum material and develops outdoor skill classes for both teachers and the public. Ginger, how do you have time to do all these amazing things?
I mean, once I stopped sleeping, everything became possible.
Seriously, though. Oh, it's so good to have you on, Ginger. And our audience is going to be so excited when they see today's show because it is delicious. There's so many great recipes that you it took me on a journey with, and I'm still dreaming about them and eating them. So I have my cup of Harry Mountain Mint tea because I did go buy a couple Harry Mountain Mint plants after our session together with wild foraging. So thank you for all your expertise and for such a fun episode today.
Thanks for having me. I've always been a fan of this organization, and I love the very, very important work that you do and the folks listening in do for our environment, for our natural landscapes.
It's pretty awesome. Well, Ginger, do you have any cool projects or anything you want to tell us about before we jump into today's Deep Roots episode?
That's a good question. I am right now. I'm kind of processing on some newer things. I'm trying to put the final touches on some spoon carving classes,
Ooh.
and I'm starting bark tanning. Um, and then I have some more natives that are waiting in a bucket for me to plant them. So I'm trying to imagine space for them.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and folks, if you are uh in Clinton or willing to travel to Clinton, Missouri, which is not that very far from Kansas City, Ginger hosts so many great programs through the Department of Conservation. So don't miss out, don't sleep on it. You got to go attend some of her workshops because she's amazing, as you're going to see in today's show.
If anyone would like to know more about, so I call it kind of the greater Truman area text alerts, but if you text MDC space Valley to Gov 311, you can sign up for those text alerts and hear more about the upcoming classes.
Oh,
Um,
that's
I'll be
perfect.
I'll be doing some foraging walks pretty soon, and in May we're going to uh, work some more on our pollinator plantings there at the Clinton Conservation Office, and then probably make a pesto out of a chunk of what we weed out of there. So
So good. You guys have to go. It's awesome. That pesto is amazing. I dream about it. And now I'm like, okay, what else is in my yard that I can make into pesto, which I think I'm going to be doing this weekend. So, I'm hooked. I'm hooked on wild foraging thanks to you, Ginger. Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to get started with today's Deep Roots episode on front yard foraging. Eat your Weedies with Missouri Department of Conservation. Enjoy. Well, hi! I hope you brought your appetite for today's scrumptious Deep Roots episode. Foraging, the practice of gathering food, is an intrinsic part of human history dating back over 200,000 years. Contemporarily, foraging is a fun way to connect with nature, and you don't have to go very far to enjoy it. Foraging encourages outdoor recreation while sparking curiosity and creativity in the kitchen. Our friend Ginger Miller from the Missouri Department of Conservation took us on a foraging adventure at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center and even into my front yard in the heart of Kansas City, Missouri. In today's Deep Roots episode, Ginger shares sustainable and safe foraging practices, easily identifiable species, and demonstrates some yummy recipes that we do want you to try at home. Okay, grab your shears and foraging baskets, and let's get started with today's Deep Roots episode on front yard foraging.
my name is Ginger Miller, and I am a conservation educator with the Missouri Department of Conservation. I work out of the Clinton office, and I am an avid forager. Today, we're looking at some of these spring wild edibles. So, just like nature is in seasons, so is foraging, right? You're not going to expect a delicious tomato in January, right? But foraging, you can have delicious food all year long. There's just different windows, the different plants or different parts of plants are at their prime. So since it is spring, we're looking at spring greens and flowers. So in general, with a lot of exceptions, but we focus foraging on the parts of the plant that the most energy is being put into. So in the spring, it's all about shooting up your green sprouts and then throwing on some beautiful, beautiful flowers. And so those are the parts we're gonna munch on today. You only want to harvest in places where you have permission to harvest. You want to follow all the guidelines for the area where you're harvesting. So make sure, obey all the rules, leave no trace. My hands are muddy because we had something that needed to be removed from an area. Normally we wouldn't dig, but we had permission since it was something that wasn't native to remove that. So normally there's no harvesting of the roots. And when we harvest delicately, one of my mentors, Rachel West, would say, harvest like a deer. So you go around and you pick a little here and you pick a little there, and that way the plants can rebound really quickly and produce more food for you and the wildlife. And a safety concern, I also want to always remind you to be aware of where you're collecting. Okay, so there might be something really pretty. It's really hard to get to because it's across the steep bank. So think about things like that, but also think about the area. Like, look around you. Is this an area that might be heavily polluted? Those sorts of things. So just like other crops, right? Although we do grow crops right next to the roadsides and other things, but for foraging, a lot of us do it for some additional health benefits because it's the freshest produce imaginable. And so we try to avoid areas that have been sprayed or treated. If it's an area that's heavily trafficked by pets, you may want to avoid that. There is nowhere that we can go where something hasn't peed, right? So if it's not an area that's likely to have been peed on recently, it's fine.
Also, just rinse your stuff.
Yeah, you can rinse it. And I do tend to nibble in the field, but I'm not saying that that's the best way to do things. It's best to rinse it off a little bit. So foraging in nature, actually my own story, a few years ago, I shattered my lower leg and had 18 screws and 2 plates and wasn't getting around well, but I got up and pushed through the pain to get active again because I took a foraging class. And then I had to go out and see all my plant friends and harvest them and eat them. So it's a great way to connect to nature and to connect to the seasons. Right? Because you got to be out there not once, but go through the whole season. These henbed, downettle, ground ivy, they are mostly just around in the spring. Your violets are mostly just going to be blooming right now. So if you don't go pick your violets now, then you're not going to have purple sugar for a whole year. So
that's a travesty. We need purple sugar. I'm so excited.
And then, you get to know an area. That's one of the reasons why we started with backyard foraging, because you see the plants throughout the year and you know what's growing there, and then you can see what it looks like when it's young, and you know that area. So you know if something is new here and there's only one of it, or if last year there was a small patch of it and now it's kind of taken over, harvest, a lot more of that one, and you can use it to landscape, right? And curate that landscape based upon what's growing there and then how delicious it is. So it's estimated that about 60 to 70% of what would come up here if we just scraped off the ground would be edible plants. So whether they're native plants or not native plants, most of our landscape, I dare say, is edible. You always have to know what it is that you're eating, because there are a few things that are toxic and some that just aren't very fun to eat. But we have a largely edible landscape out there. Plants, animals, mushrooms, and even our small animals, the insects. We have a largely edible landscape. So when I'm out in my backyard foraging, I want to be real careful with the native things, right? But there are so many things this time of year that are very, very common that are not native to this area that I can harvest with reckless abandon. It's also a season where you want to get a lot of these things now. If you want dead nettle, now is the time to get it, because you won't see much of it, as it gets later into the year. So aside from, maybe in the shade, you want to pick in an area where you're allowed to pick. You want to pick in an area that's not overly contaminated. So pay attention to that. You want to pick cleanly. So instead of ripping these up with dirt on the ends and then getting my basket full of dirt, I want to pick cleanly and keep things kind of separated normally so I can tell them apart and sort through them easily, especially since I might use them for different things. So that's dead nettle, and we will see henbit today, and we will see ground ivy today. Those three look similar. They can be used similarly. Their flavors will just be a little different. So there's some that are a little better suited for different things. I am grabbing some. Oh, look at that! I am grabbing some wild alliums. This looks like a wild onion to me. I have to take a look at that more.
Yeah, look at that.
Wild onion or wild garlic, they all eat the same. So as long as you have hollow stems and that garlic or onion smell, you're good. The lookalikes do not have the garlic or onion smell. Daffodils are sometimes mixed up with wild garlic, which I don't quite understand. But you know, like plants look different in different places. And Star of Bethlehem. Now, Star of Bethlehem is toxic, so you have to, and you shouldn't eat daffodils either. But you have to be really careful with that one. Star of Bethlehem would have a white stripe down its leaf. It would be in clumps, and it would be a darker, shiny green color. So one of the things you'll learn as you start foraging more is there's so many different colors of green, and you can spot the right color of green from a distance as you start going along. But yeah, if it has that hollow stem, smells like garlic or onion, you're good. You just don't want to pick a bunch of this and then pick Star of Bethlehem and smell your hand instead of smelling what's in your hand. So sometimes hands behind your back and you got to sniff the stems just to make sure you're staying on the right track. But yeah, these are fantastic as a substitute for green onions or garlic or chives. You can put them on potatoes. You can use them in salads. They're delightful on a buttered potato. So this is purple dead nettle. Purple dead nettle is in the mint family. So you can feel and see that that stem is square. Okay. And it's a little harder to see on some of these, but the leaves are opposite one another. So square stems, opposite leaves, and then mint flowers look like this. So they might be bigger, they might be smaller, but once you get to know some of your plant families, which you'll get to know some pretty quickly as you start foraging, you'll get to know those characteristics that together let you know this is a mint. So the blossoms are lovely and sweet. They look lovely on salads. They're also really pretty if you dry them and then put them in like a finishing salt. So like slab a ribeye with like butter with little blossoms and salt in them. They're a little fuzzy. So I think Alexis Nicole, the Black Forager, said, you know, like, what if a plant had just a tiny bit of BO? So, because they have a little bit of like a funky smell to them and flavor to them. So the fuzziness isn't as much fun for raw, but you can blend those up and you can get a lot of vitamins and nutrients. Pick some young goldenrods. Those will be fun to put in things. A few more onions. Cleavers. And you can tell it's a cleaver because it'll do this. So it's thought that cleavers are probably one of the inspirations for Velcro. You can feel that roughness to them. Cleavers are great in lemonade to give you an extra nutrient boost. You can grind them up in things also. So lots of fun ways to eat cleavers. Okay, so here is a redbud tree. You see its beautiful little heart-shaped blossoms. This is that same tree that greeted us with purple blooms just a few short weeks ago. Pardon my muddy hands, it's been a fun day. Soon this tree will get little bean pods because it is in the bean family. So beans can be trailing and bushy, and beans can also be trees, which I think is just amazing. But the young leaves of this are edible also, and you can take those young bean pods and eat those, and you can eat the flowers. If I was on my game better, I would have harvested more of the purple flowers. They make a great jelly. You can also dry them and use for things. You can take the young unopened red buds and you can pickle them like capers. But yeah, I like to take the little purple blossoms and just sprinkle them around like glitter. So dandelions you might see growing in your yard. They look like sunshine. They also taste like sunshine. If you make jelly out of these petals of their flowers, they have a honey and sunshine flavor. Just a rich golden color. So if you need more sunshine, having some of those little jellies you can have in the dead of winter and know dandelions are just around the corner and spring is just around the corner is pretty fun. The easiest way to get the petals free from the green portions here is to kind of roll those, squish and roll just a little bit, and then we can pull the yellow parts off and leave the green parts behind. We'll put those in with our white pine. We're going to grind those up into just, for speed purposes, a store-bought cookie mix. So they'll add a honey richness. We can also, I know morels are very popular and fun and delicious. Dandelions have a similar flavor if you batter and fry them as well. And they're so rich that, you know, like I can eat my weight in morels. Yes. But with dandelions, you have some and you're like, okay, like that was delicious and I'm good for now. So I'm going to nib these beauties into slightly smaller pieces just to make it easier to grind them up. But yeah, shortleaf pine works really delicious for this, and eastern white pine works really delicious for this too. So here is our cookie mix that we pulsed some white pine needles in. You can add however many needles you want. You just want to get it fairly fine so the texture doesn't cause your cookies to kind of fall apart. Oh, that smell. It's incredible. I love that kind of smell. And we've added extra vitamin C to it, so like they're healthy cookies now.
Pretty much healthy, aren't they?
Have some extras.
While our white pine dandelion petal cookies are baking, we used the leftover pine needles to start a soda. With a little patience and some sugar water, we covered the needles in a clean bottle. The natural yeast in the pine needles feeds on the sugar, releasing carbonation and creating a tasty 7-Up flavored soda.
So it kind of depends on the yeast, the season, the temperature of your house, 1,000,001 factors. So in, 12 hours to 4 or 5 days, it should be ready.
Perfect.
If you go to open it, like be ready to have it secured, in both of your thumbs and all of your weight to work this device here. And you can, if it's getting too hard to open and you're like, yikes, I didn't pay attention like they said to, pop it in your fridge to settle it down just a little more. It'll make it a little easier to open. But I have the shame stains on my ceiling from opening those and not paying close enough attention. And it looks beautiful already, but those citrus flavors of the white pine make an incredible fizzy beverage. All right, we are making some wild violet sugar. So to make a nice purple sugar. You can also make a syrup out of wild violets, and you can make a jelly out of wild violets, and the jelly is phenomenal. So for that jelly, you would make it like other flower jellies, where you would take the petals from the flower, not the rest of it, just the petals from the flower, and then pour hot water over them, and then let them sit overnight. Strain those out, and then you have flower tea, and then you make that flower tea into jelly with whatever box mix or process that you normally use to make a jelly. The wild violets are tasty. They make tasty syrups, they make tasty jellies. They are beautiful in lemonade. You can have a wild punch with wild violets.
After plucking each petal, we added them in granulated sugar to a food processor and mixed until pulverized. What's left is beautiful purple sugar.
Oh my gosh. Is it perfect?
You can make colorful perfumed sugars from many different edible flowers. Next, we made flower petal sugar with non-native dandelion petals. Rolling each bud helps release the flower petals as you pick them. Add the sugar to a beverage or use to decorate desserts for a little added bit of whimsy.
Since we just blended up a lot of flowers in it, the sugar's going to be pretty wet. Just be prepared to work with that.
And if you wanted it to be dry, what are some options there?
You could lay it out on your counter, and then it'll kind of try to clump up on you as it dries, but then you can break it back up.
Cheers. Fresh cookie out of the oven. Mmm. Oh my god, you
You
guys.
can taste the pine.
It's so good.
I love it.
Mmm. And that honey flavor from the dandelion.
The dandelion in it and the dandelion on top.
Mmm. You guys,
Mhm.
what a great way to like step it up a notch with a box mix, right?
Mhm.
It's perfect.
All right, so I know we're familiar with some mints that will take off and kind of overtake an area. I want you to know that we have a number of native mints as well. Some of them do grow well, shall we say, but they are delicious and you can gobble them up. You can make mint extract out of them. You can make mint honey out of them. You can do so many things with them that when you start looking at the edible uses for mints, I would argue that you need to plant a whole lot more. And mint teas, mint teas are delightful.
It's my favorite.
So we have, remember we said mint has a square stem, it has opposite leaves, and then it's gonna have those mint flowers that are characteristic when it's in bloom. So all of these are mints, and these are a few of my favorites. We have two different kinds of Monarda or bee balm. We have this one, Monarda fistulosa, with a long petiole. And we have Monarda bradburnii with a very short petiole. But still it has those opposite leaves. So when in doubt, always plant lots of Monarda. Lots of Monarda. It will grow well, it will grow reliably, and you can always use it and use it and use it. One of the favorite things I like to use Monarda for is kind of a substitute for oregano. It also goes very well in honey. So we're gonna ferment some in honey. So we have, we've picked these, we've washed them, we've dried them to where they're not a dried plant, but they're back to as dry as they were when we harvested them, if that makes sense. Okay, we're gonna mix these two kinds of Monarda in here, and we're gonna just chop them into small pieces and poke them down in the honey. And then every couple of days, we'll kind of turn that and shake it to keep the pieces down submerged in the honey. And then eat the honey. Make things out of the honey. All right, I almost forgot to introduce you to Slender Mountain Mint. Has a milder flavor, very thin leaves. And then my absolute favorite for teas, Hairy Mountain Mint. And it is a strong, spicy, flavored mint that is absolutely heavenly. Oh, and one of my little friends that's still outdoors that maybe you'll meet later is Dittany. Dittany is so good. It's such a spicy, rich oregano. So we will take this honey and a little bit of bee balm here. I put stems in there too. The stems are fine with me. If they got really woody later in the year, would probably take some out. Well, I would probably still put them in there because that's what I do, but you might like it better if you took some of those out. So we are going to pack this mint in here. It's easier if you use 2 jars and then pour the honey over the top. As this honey ferments, you want to put the wet things into the honey instead of dried herbs. But the honey will get nice and runny as it ferments.
Y'all, this is like seriously divine honey. I've never tasted anything quite like it until Ginger introduced it to me last year at a program at the Discovery Center. And this is such an easy thing you can do, right? Kind of like the sugar cookie, the box sugar cookie hack, adding and modifying it. You can do this very simply and then have a really unique honey that you can wow your friends with, give it as a gift, and just enjoy it for yourself.
We have some. You can see it's a lot thinner. And as this fermented, the bottle expanded, so I needed to burp it a few times.
Okay, good to know. And so how long does it take? Like, do you serve it immediately? Do you wait a little bit? What do you do?
So there's not a time when you can't eat it, but once it gets runnier, it will combine the flavors a lot better and pull some of the moisture out. So when it's a little runnier, you'll notice more flavor. There's not a wrong time to eat it. Okay, so in addition to fermenting the bee balm and honey, you can also make an oxmel. Take a smell of that.
That smells so good. It's like, let me describe the smell. I smell like the twang of vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
I smell bee balm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of sweet too.
Mm-hmm.
Say more.
Bee balm leaves in the jar, and then I pour honey over the top and vinegar over the top. Actually, it's better if you put the vinegar in first and then the honey, because it's easier to get it to combine that way. And you just let it set for a few weeks. You can strain this out, or you can leave it, and it's delicious. It's delicious as a salad dressing. It's very energizing if you have it with like fizzy water, like plain fizzy water, and you add this for a little kick. I know it sounds strange, but vinegar is very, very refreshing when you're working out in the heat. So this oxmel is a great way to have refreshment.
I love that. It's like a shrub, right?
Yes. So here we have chickweed. It's a very mild green, so it's a good thing to make the bulk of your pesto with to give it kind of a mild flavor. So really, I could just grind those all up, but I'll kind of pick some of the stems out of those. This pesto's looking healthy, isn't it?
It's looking cute. Cute, healthy, and delicious. I love eating my Weedies.
Oh, they're so good. Ground ivy.
Nice.
This is another mint. It also gets the little flowers. This is a thin stalk of it, but it also gets the little flowers like henbit and bend will do. And we have a little mix of several greens.
So you pretty much can put whatever you want in your pesto.
Your edible greens. The world is your oyster for your edible greens. You'll want to, especially when you're first starting out with these, kind of limit how many of the really strong, bold flavors and bitter flavors you put in. But I think you'll notice as you start eating these things that your taste will change. You'll want more and more of that bitter flavor. It's kind of strange. So for a lot of these wild foods, the first time I ate them, I thought, okay, that was interesting. You know, that was interesting. And the second time I'd have them, I would think to myself, wow, I don't remember it was that good, but like, this is really good. I just didn't remember it was that good. And then after that, start craving them because I just fall in love with the flavors. So I think our palates really do change. Our diet historically had a lot more bitter flavors in it. And when we have domesticated plants, we've taken a lot of the strong flavors and a lot of the nutrients out. So those wild plants will definitely give you an energy boost and a lot of nutrients that you might not be getting as much of. So this tiny friend is yellow wood sorrel. We'll look at some of that in the field also. It's also called pickle plant because it gets those tiny little pickles on it. It's sour.
It's an oxalis, so the same as the shamrock plants that you purchase around this time of year, which are also edible as long as they haven't been sprayed or treated with anything. It has a lemony, zingy flavor. You can eat all of the above ground parts.
Amazing.
And we saw our friends wild violets out here. So here are some wild violet leaves that we're going to add to this.
Yum.
And we have some red bud leaves. And then a little bit of young goldenrod. A little extra boost of flavor and nutrients there. Why not add some bee balm?
Why not?
Little oregano zip to it.
Okay, so we got the pesto base made, and Ginger's gonna add some garlic scape salt that I made last year.
That's beautiful.
It's delicious. It's got a nice earthy smell to it. And this pesto looks incredible.
Oh, it's so green.
It's so green, and it's gonna be delicious.
Okay, so dandelions are a common sight in the spring, and all parts of them are edible. Different parts will be more edible in different seasons. These have matured really quickly in my yard. Some will cook these stems that have the flowers at the top. Some will even cook these as kind of a noodle. I like to take these and hang them up by the flowers. And these are probably going to pop open and poof. So keep that in mind as well. If you harvest them in this stage, you might want to pop those off to avoid the poofs happening in your house. But you can loosely bind them and let the stems dry. And then these are useful for weaving tiny, adorable dandelion baskets. So look those up online, what dandelion baskets look like.
Amazing.
And you will thank me later. You can take the roots of dandelion, scrub those off really well. You can roast them. You can use them as like coffee supplement or a coffee substitute. And there are a number of cookbooks that actually give you recipes with dandelion roots. It's by my mentor, Rachel West, and she takes you through the season with wild foods. You can see that I have a number of pages bookmark, but you can make dandelion brownies with those roots that are amazing. And she has got sugar cookies with the flowers in here and a number of other recipes. And it's normal food with like a wild ingredient to like, kick it up a notch. So the thing is, we put wild foods in this completely separate category. Like, I'm going to go do this different thing and eat different food, when really wild food is food. It's delicious food. You can make flowers, both kinds of flowers. So you can use flowers for art, but you can also make flowers for baking out of wild foods. You can make spices and seasonings out of wild foods. You can use greens. They can be fruits. They can be vegetables. If you include mushrooms, you can have some nice proteins, some meat out of wild foods. So they're just foods, they're just foods that are very good for you, that are less commonly consumed. So one thing would be a cookbook to help you make that transition into including wild things with what you eat. And then you also need some identification guides. A couple of the guides that I love are by another one of my mentors, Bo Brown, Foraging the Central Grasslands and Foraging the Ozarks. So they'll show you how to identify different plants, the habitat, the range, and he has several delicious recipes in these books as well. Great places to get started, as well as regular field guides that don't even talk about what to eat, but help you learn your plant families and then learn how to identify 100% what it is that you're looking at. And don't sleep on guides that talk about weeds in your yard and other things, because some are native and some are non-native, on the things that we eat. So learning how to identify those weeds, and you'll see up front that we have a patch that just kind of looks like a little, it's cute, but it kind of looks like a little weedy patch. Then when we start looking at the plants in there, you can see that most everything there is a delicious salad, a delicious pesto, like edible stuff, just waiting for us to know its name and understand its uses and what recipes we can put it into and eat it. Okay, so we talked about dandelion roots. The leaves, the light color leaves or the leaves that are in the shade will be a little less bitter. The darker leaves and the older leaves will be a little stronger. You can have them, but as your flavor and your palate adapts, you'll enjoy more of the stronger flavors. But these greens can be blended up into smoothies. Some of the high-end grocery stores will sell dandelion greens now, so it's becoming more of a thing. You can also, these plants are later in the season, but you can also get down to the base of these when they're grown in the field and find the tiny unopened buds and make capers out of those.
Ooh,
So they
yum.
make delicious capers. We've used the flowers and things. We didn't use the roots yet, but I showed you a book where you can learn more of those uses. But we're gonna put some of the greens in the pesto, and this will be a little stronger, more pungent flavor. So we'll use a moderate amount so we don't overwhelm our other flavors here in the pesto.
If you couldn't tell, Ginger and I had a great time making tasty things from wild greens. In addition to the recipes you saw, we also made herb compound butter and wilted greens. All these recipes and more can be found in the show notes or online at deeproots.org.
All right, so we have our wilted greens. We topped them with a few wild violets because I think we should always treat ourselves to some delicious flowers as part of our meal. We have hairy mountain mint dried that we're gonna make some tea with. It is delicious, strong mint flavor.
It's so lovely.
Oh, it's delightful. And of course, it's native.
Yes.
We have 3 different compound butters.
One has nettle and ground ivy. There's one that has sorrel, wood sorrel, and violets and dandelion petals and dittany,
And lemon zest.
lemon zest. All the
wild
rest of
garlic.
yeah. Oh yeah, the wild garlic, which I will show you all here in a second. It's just delicious.
We also took the wild garlic, some of them that were larger, and we threw those in with salt brine. So these are gonna ferment up like cocktail onions.
Amazing.
Just be outstanding on salads, on bread, and whatever. Here's our pesto on pasta, and this is our wild violet sugar that we're going to use to sweeten our tea. You can also make a syrup out of wild violets. You can make a syrup out of dandelion. Here's the white pine soda that we started.
Yay!
We're gonna test it. You do this, you want to test it carefully. It's just been a couple days, so it's probably not. We're safe for now.
We're safe.
But this will become very fizzy from the wild yeast that are on top of the pine needles.
Amazing.
Gorgeous fizzy soda. Reminiscent of spring.
Yes. Bon appetit, Ginger.
Let's dive in.
I hope you enjoyed today's Deep Roots episode, Front Yard Foraging with Missouri Department of Conservation. Stick around for the live Q&A with Ginger Miller coming up next.
Awesome. I'd like to welcome Ginger back to the virtual stage. Hi, Ginger.
Hello.
We have some really great questions in our Q&A for you. And folks, if you would like to get more insight from Ginger, now is your opportunity to go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A, and we're going to go ahead and dive in. Okay. So our first question from Anonymous, which I think is a really great question, one that I looked into as well, is every plant in the mint family edible? Ginger, can we dive in and talk about this a little more in depth?
So that's a great question. I am not aware of any mints that you can't eat. Our native mints are edible. Our non-native mints that tend to grow here are edible. Maybe there's some tropical mint that has something dangerous. And when I say they're edible, I mean, like you can pick them, you can make them into a tea, You can just chomp on them. All of these plants will be more nutrient dense and have a lot of compounds that were not as useful, or sorry, not as used to. Um, when they're the ancestors of our domestic crops. And so, like we took all of these compounds out of them. And a lot of those were the things that are thought to be medicinal and very healthy until we got iceberg lettuce at the end. So, all things in moderation, including moderation, right? So, I'm not saying distill these plants in some way and eat them like that, but I am not aware of any mints that are native or that regularly grow here that are not edible.
I did find one that it is edible, but again, like you're saying, in smaller doses, and that happens to be Pycnanthemum muticum, which is our blunt leaf um mint. And actually, let me pull up, I've got a little information here, because I was curious too, and I had heard from Lisa Richter, who is a naturalist and friend of the show at Baroque Woods. And so she said that she had reminded me a while ago that there is one species. So that Pycnanthemum muticum, which I'll put in the chat, is widely regarded as non-toxic to both people and animals. However, it does contain polygon, which is a compound found in its essential oils, and it can be harmful in large doses, particularly if concentrated extracts are ingested, as it may affect liver functions. So, distilling ingredients is a whole different ballgame, right, Ginger? Like compared to some of the things that
Absolutely.
we're eating. Yeah. But great question. And along similar species, let's keep on the topic of our mints.
Mhm.
Janelle is asking if hairy mint will irritate your throat like other hairy plants. What are your thoughts on hairy plants in general?
Uh, so in general, hairy plants seem less fun to eat because it feels like you have fur in your mouth for a lot of them. Some of them have trichomes or, powerful defenses that involve, like hairs and pokey parts and other small hair-shaped things. Hairy mountain mint has never affected me like that. Dead nettle is a little fuzzy. It just feels weird to have like a fuzzy plant in my mouth. So I've never had any of the problems with mints.
Yeah, and I think as you mentioned in the show, like if you blend them up or if you cook them, they lose that hairy quality too. So it just needs a little bit of
Or
preparation.
even stinging nettle. Yeah, like once you activate all those trichomes, stinging nettle is fine. So you can rub them up and let them sting you, or or trigger their response, or you can steam them up, and nettles are delicious. So
So
stinging
good.
nettle, wood nettle, in addition to dead nettle, which is not at all the same.
Yeah. Common names, am I right?
Common names are hard.
They are. Okay, so Ginger, you had mentioned that people can be informed about upcoming programs via a text alert.
Mhm.
Um, I will have you send me that information, and I will include that in the resources following today's show. And additionally, some folks asked about the recipes. Those are also included in the resources following today's show. So you'll get an email from me and with all that information. And if for folks who are not attending our live show right now, you can find them on our website at deeproots.org under our nature show. So be sure to check that out following today's program. And then Susanna is asking about rinsing the things that you harvest. Do you soak them in water? Do you use vinegar? What do you do, Ginger? And what are options there?
Okay, so that's a good question. Part of it's going to depend on what it is and where I found it, and how much I know about the whole history of the area, or if it's dusty out, or if there's pollen out. Have we had a recent rain? Have we had a distant rain? Like all of those natural cycles. Um, for being somebody who has a little bit of phobia about germs, I am a lot more adventurous when it comes to wild food. Um, I will nibble on some stuff out in the field, much like I would if you think of, like when you're picking strawberries. if I pick them and bring them in the house, of course, I rinse the strawberries carefully. I might even soak them in some vinegar water for a little bit. When I'm out in the field picking the strawberries, I'm going to eat some of them, and I'm going to eat some of those cherry tomatoes out in the field. So it's really about your comfort level, and if you have, you know, sensitivities to some things, I would be more mindful of being more thorough and scrubbing that stuff down.
Nice. That's a good answer. And I'm kind of the same way. It's funny how I'm like, yeah, I'll try things out there in the field. Now of course if I see like wet urine on them, I probably won't.
Yeah.
But that's always a good sign. That's a good cue to not, I don't know, to maybe wait or pick from another area or rinse it off. But that's really
There's actually a thing. I believe Sam Thayer is who kind of started this process among foragers, where they do what's called giraffing. Well, they'll go up to a tree and hands behind their back and just
oh, that's
eat some
really
leaves
fun.
right off of it.
We might have to do that in our next episode
We
together.
may have to giraffe, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the honey and botulism. So this is a two-part question. First from Annie. Does the mint type plants in the honey change the flavor? And what would you put the flavored honey on besides straight into your mouth? Like I do.
Um, it's good for eating. It's good for flavoring. It's good on toast with butter. It's good to sweeten, like your teas and things. It's great to add to regular black tea for just that hint of something special. For botulism questions, I'm gonna defer you to um, MU Extension. They have
Mm,
food safety people to answer that more thoroughly.
cool.
I will tell you that it's very common practice to put things in honey. Um, Oil is where we really start worrying more about botulism, right? And we worry most about oil when you have root plants, like the roots of the garlic, things like that, you would be a lot more concerned about.
Mhm. Very good. And folks, I'll include a link to MU Extension in the resources so that you can follow up if you have additional questions. Val's asking about speedwells, Veronica heterofolia, and all the other Veronica species. Are they edible? Are you familiar with this plant? It's one of our common ones that grows. Before it blooming in the garden probably about a month or so ago.
I haven't done much with speedwells. I haven't really done much with speedwells. I think there are parts of them that people eat. And so so the thing about eating wild plants is, um, I I listened to a talk of Sam Thayer's a number of times, and he said, you meet one plant friend at a time. So there's some things like I don't have that in my lawn for some reason, and there's very little of it at the office. Um, but I just haven't I
Mhm.
haven't gotten to that one yet, you know? So I just make another wild friend at a time
Love
as we're
that.
going along. So I would encourage you to do that when you're getting started as well. Don't start with 50 wild plants and throw them together. Allergic reactions are very uncommon, but just like with anything else, they're possible. I have a dear friend that's allergic to carrots. That's not something that we think, like I've heard of some people allergic to strawberries and other things, but you can be allergic to anything, and these are not things that we've had before. So you would normally start one plant at a time and probably one plant part at a time. For me, I think adding, because I have a fair amount of experience with plants, I still think for me, adding more than one plant friend a week would be way too quick. But if I'm adding one a week, I'm going to have 52 plant friends at the end of that year, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna have 104 plant friends at the end of year 2, and that's plenty fast to add those a little at a time, and that way you can kinda gauge how do they affect me, how do I feel when I eat them. You're just a lot more in tune with nature, and I think, like, how the plants make you feel as well when you're foraging. So, 1 plant at a time.
I like that. That's a really good school of thought. And the same thing applies to eating mushrooms, and like
Mhm.
allergic reactions. And I've been told from expert mushroom foragers, like if you've never eaten like a lion's mane or hen of the woods or chicken of the woods, also just prepare it properly. I first of all identify it properly, prepare it properly, and then just have a little bit, because that's how you kind of figure out whether these things agree with you or not. Teresa is asking about the flower petal sugars, which are some of my favorite things that we made. And she's asking, how long do they keep? And once they're dry, do they keep well?
So we enjoy them a lot. So mine don't last very long. Um, they're gonna clump up and they're gonna, some of the time they're gonna become a lot more liquidy. Some of the time they're gonna become kind of a hard little rock. For longer use, I would uh, I would put them in the little tiny square molds you can get, not
Mm,
the ice cube size, the little like 20th of an ice cube size molds. Some of them are even like for dog treats.
so fun.
You can get those tiny little molds and make sugar cubes out of them. I would do that for longer use because that way when they dry, they're ready to go. Um,
That's a cool idea. I love
or
that.
syrups. You can do syrups,
Yeah.
and it's a great way to do them. Yeah, I made spiceberry sugar cubes. I
Ooh.
made maypop sugar cubes. I made elderberry juice sugar cube, and they're just this gorgeous deep
Oh my
violet color. So then you can just, sprinkle in some flowers here and there. Now, when you use natural flowers for, like your sugar cubes and things like that, some will start to fade and others will hold that color, just like when you use the plants as dye. So they're going to vary a lot.
Yeah, and folks, for the sugars that we made for today's show, I ended up I know Ginger, you mentioned you can like lay them out on your counter to dry them. I
Mhm.
also just popped them into my dehydrator. Like I made sure I like and just dried it that way because I was like, I want to use these for a while. I have plans for these, so
Mhm.
there's lots of things to do there.
And then just be prepared, yeah, to grind them again at the end of that because they're going to get all crunchy, like when you make salts with wild flavors.
Right. That's cool. Okay, we're down to our last couple questions. Um, Annie Martin is asking about the yellow flower plant that we used and what it was called. I believe we talked about dandelions and we talked about wood sorrel. Can you think of any other?
Yellow wood sorrel, dandelions, and we had, if you saw all that yellow in the background, we had some wild mustard,
That's right. That's what
and
that.
we put that on some pesto and bread as well.
Yeah, that was really good. Okay, and then our last question from Val. Have you ever used cream cheese instead of butter to compound your herbs? That sounds really good.
Uh, So, yes, I've made flavored cream cheeses and they're delightful. The only thing with the compound butters, Wild Wise Botanicals, you should follow them on social media. They have gorgeous educational everything, and they made compound butters where they rolled the entire outside of the butter log. So you have all the plants inside and you have plants across the outside. You could stripe it up like your favorite caterpillar to match. You
So
could
cool.
do anything and just, I mean, stunning for the Easter table. But on the cream cheeses, they'll kind of smear out across the outside of those flowers more. So for something in a tub with flower sprinkles, uh, cream cheese is your friend. For the butters, they'll just look a little prettier to maintain their shape with the flowers on the outside as well. But they
Nice.
but they all work, and when in doubt, as long as it's a safe wild food, eat the wild food.
Right? I still have some of the butter in my fridge and I just kind of go in there for a little snack and like put some on a cracker or butter or butter on bread or something. Yeah.
And I'll try to keep my story short, but I had a neighbor that said, "Hey, I have this in my garden. Do you know what it is?" Well, it was purslane grown, right? Purslane is delicious. You can eat it fresh, you can pickle it, you can cook it and eat it. And she said, "Well, it's grown by my tomatoes." And I said, "Well, it's so much healthier for you than even your tomatoes. Like, gobble it up."
Right.
And she said, "Well, I talked to my husband. Please come get all you can because then we're going to spray." So foraging is eco-friendly in so many different levels when you're harvesting responsibly. Um, I mean, can you imagine the layering of all these healthy things in your garden with you versus spraying things that are not good for you or the environment all around your tomato plants that you're going to eat? Um,
Feels counterintuitive, yeah.
it's something to think about, you know? It's just something to think about when we're out there.
Well, you really gave me a lot to think about in terms of how I view my garden, right? Like, I know some of our viewers have seen my native garden out front from previous shows, and now I'm incorporating edibles, both like more traditional culinary
Mhm.
herbs, both native and non-native, but also some of those species that would be considered weedy, like the chickweeds and the violets and speedwells and things like that. I have patches for them to exist in because I love them, and you
Nice.
that's all because of you, Ginger. So thank you. It gave me a totally new perspective on my garden and just how I can further connect with nature through foraging and eating. And yeah, I'm such a nerd, it gives me goosebumps thinking about. But I just want to thank you for your expertise and your passion and your joy and all that you do for our community and through the Missouri Department of Conservation. So thank you, Ginger. What a wonderful episode today.
Thank you.
All right, folks. And I almost forgot. I have a pop quiz for you all. So don't leave yet. I know some of you are starting to log off, but don't leave yet because you can win a foraging book. So actually, let me show you right here. We have a Bo Brown Foraging Central Grasslands book that I'm going to send to a winner. So for today's pop quiz, the first person to put in the chat the answer correctly to today's question will win this copy. I'll mail it to you. So here's today's question. So we were talking about wild edibles and toxic lookalikes. So for our wild garlic and wild onions, Ginger named two plants that are commonly misidentified and are actually poisonous. I need you to mention both of them. And it looks like we have our winner. It is, let's see. So the answer is Star Bethlehem and daffodils. That's the toxic lookalike for our wild garlic and wild onions. And S. Ahern, I'm probably botching your last name, but please go ahead and message or email me your mailing address, and we will ship this out as well as some other goodies from Deep Roots. But thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. And I hope you will join me for our next episode on May 15th as we explore Big Bull Creek with Johnson County Parks and Recreation District. And also don't forget that I'll be hosting a in-person guided naturalist walk out there 2 days after that episode airs. So if you want to get a sneak peek of what that looks like, you can tune in on the 15th. Or if you want to just come out and walk the woods with me and other nature enthusiasts, go ahead and register online at deeproots.org for our May 17th hike. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.